तव कथामृतं तप्तजीवनं घविरेटितं कल्मषापहं शरवणमङ्गलं श्रीमदाततं भुवि वदन्ति भूरिराजन्. Your words are like nectar, bringing life to scorched souls. They are praised by poets and remove all sin. They are auspicious to hear, wonderful and exalted. Those who spread these words throughout the world are truly giving souls. Welcome, everyone, to our class on the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. We're on the chapter M at Dakshineswar, part 1, and it is Sunday, December 23rd, 1883. So we're getting closer to the end of M's long stay at Dakshineswar with Sri Ramakrishna, a very important event, chapter in the life of M. And we see how Thakur is really guiding him and really speeding up his spiritual development and putting him through lots of different changes and things, and how because M is a very sensitive person, how M is also going through all of these different types of changes. At one time, Thakur was afraid that M would run away and renounce the world even, and so it's a very, for me, one of the most interesting sections of the Gospel. So this is page 356, Sunday, December 23rd, 1883. So it's getting close to 2 years that M has been visiting Sri Ramakrishna. At 9 o'clock in the morning, Sri Ramakrishna was seated on the southwest porch of his room with Rakal, Latu, M, Harish, and some other devotees. So Rakal, Latu, and Harish at this time are more or less permanent residents. That Harish was there for some period of time. Rakal, he would go back and forth a little bit. And Latu, now, Latu, he came as a servant boy to Ramchandra Datta's house. And he used to run errands that Ramchandra would send him to Dakshineswar, and Thakur really saw in this simple, uneducated orphan boy, he saw the tremendous spirituality, and he told Ram that he wanted him to stay with him eventually. So that was kind of the arrangement. So at this point, Latu, I think, is probably more or less permanently there. M had now been 9 days with the master at Dakshineswar. Earlier in the morning, Manomohan had arrived from Kolnagar on his way to Calcutta. Hasura too was present. Hasura, of course, also lives in the temple compound. Manomohan was the brother-in-law of Rakal. Rakal was married to his sister, and it was actually through him that he came first to Dakshineswar to see Sri Ramakrishna. Although he knew about him, he was a member of the Brahma Samaj and friends with Swamiji and everything, but somehow that was a connection there. Yeah, I always find it interesting that Sri Ramakrishna was not terribly upset at Rakal's being married, and where with some of the others he was so strict about not having any connection with the women, the future monks of the order, and even that Rakal had a child, and it was more or less his fault. He said, "Go have a little fun with your wife," and the child was born. But somehow, this is part of that Leela that is not always very clear to us. Now we can say that maybe Thakur knew that Rakal had a slight desire and he wanted that to be fulfilled, but at the same time he was Nitya Siddha and Ishvara Koti, companion of the incarnation. How could he have any desire to be fulfilled? But there's things like this that we really can't give, at least I can't give any good reason for that. CM is already married. And Thakur will be stronger about this Kamini Kanchan business than he has been with Rakal. So he alone knows why he did all these things. A Vaishnava was singing, referring to one of the songs. Sri Ramakrishna said, "I didn't enjoy that song very much. The songs of the earlier writers seem to me to have more of the right spirit." Now, earlier writers, this is the Vaishnava. So there's a very rich tradition that came out of the Chaitanya movement of songs from the Vaishnava tradition. There were some great poets, this Vidyapati and Chandidas and others. One of the special features of the Chaitanya Leela was literature. They produced so many songs, and this was the closest we have to a kind of modern day biography, the life of Chaitanya Deva, with the Chaitanya Charitamrita and Bhagavata and everything. So Thakur could be referring to that, but also we know how we loved the Shakta songs of Ram Prasad and Kamalakanta. We don't know what song it was that he sang, but many of the songs that were sung, I doubt if it's in Vaishnava, I doubt it, but many of the songs that were sung by Swamiji and others were Brahma songs. And they didn't really develop that tremendous feeling of longing for God and mad for God and everything until Thakur's influence came upon them, especially Trailokya Sanyal. So he says, the songs of the earlier writers seem to me to have more of the right spirit. Once I sang for Nangta at the Panchavati. Nangta, of course, is Thakur's Vedanta guru, Totapuri. And Nangta is the naked one. And tradition in India at that time, even today, is that one doesn't mention the name of anyone who's considered to be worthy of great respect. So it can even be the husband won't say the name of the wife, won't say the name of the husband. Thakur never referred to Holy Mother as Sharada, always Ramlal's aunt. And so Totapuri, he wouldn't refer to him that way. So this is the way they would get around it. With so many instances, with so many people, women are named after the child, Ratisma. Gopalama, different things like that. So once I sang for Nangta at the Panchavati, to arms, O man, death storms your house in battle array. These are all Shakta songs. I sang another, O mother, I have no one else to blame. Alas, I sink in the well these very hands have dug. Nangta the Vedantis was a man of profound knowledge, and according to Sri Ramakrishna, established in samadhi, that he was a great yogi, God realized so. The song moved him to tears, though he didn't understand its meaning. Now, he didn't understand its meaning. We don't know how much he knew of Bengali, if he's referring to that, or if he's referring to the deeper meaning of the Shakta tradition, because it wasn't until just before he left Dakshineswar that he had that great vision of the mother and everything, and felt that now his knowledge was complete. So I don't know what sense it is. We know that Thakur knew enough Hindi that he could converse with him in Hindi. He was from Punjab, so he would have been a Hindi speaker. So he didn't understand its meaning. Very difficult to say exactly if he meant because of language or because he was a Vedantist who dismissed this idea of this world is unreal like a dream. He accepted that view. This world is and this idea of Divine Mother was to him a little bit childish. That he looked upon what we call Divine Mother is just Maya, as this kind of power of ignorance and delusion that way. And we know that when he first went to Sri Ramakrishna and said, you seem to be an ideal candidate for this Advaita Vedanta and sannyasa and everything, that I'd like to initiate you. And he said, let me check with my mother first. So he thought it was his real mother, but Thakur meant, of course, to go to the shrine with the Holy Mother. So he gave a little smile, like he still has some ignorance and everything, that he didn't understand the power of the Divine Mother at that time. Not that we understand, but anyhow. Padmalochan also wept when I sang the songs of Ram Prasad about the Divine Mother, and he was truly a great Pandit. Now, almost all of the Pandits that Thakur came into contact with were really genuine spiritual souls also. Who do we have? Padmalochan. We have Shivnath Shastri.
No, Narayan.
Narayan Shastri, Gaudi Pandit, Vaishnav Charan. Because Thakur, if these Pandits were only scholars, he had no interest in them anyhow, and they wouldn't have had much interest in him. But and he changed the lives of so many of them, even to the point where they renounced everything and went off to Benares or Himalayas or something. After the midday meal, Sri Ramakrishna rested a few minutes in his room. M was sitting on the floor. The master was delighted to hear the music that was being played in the nahabat. This was actually the kind of music tower. The musicians would go up to the top. That was the purpose of it. It ended up being, of course, the home of Holy Mother and Thakur's own mother earlier. He then explained to M that Brahman alone has become the universe and all living beings. Now, this, of course, is one of the great themes that we have in throughout the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. And this is one of those things that we repeat all the time, but it's not very easy to, we can't really claim, I can't really claim that I fully understand what the idea was in the mind of Sri Ramakrishna. We know that this Brahman is unchanging, that this Brahman won't undergo any type of transformation. There are different schools where a Brahman to become in the universe will be like milk turning into curd, that it undergoes some type of transformation, or a portion of it will be the universe and the rest will remain Brahman. His idea wasn't like that. And at the same time, it wasn't exactly the Advaita Vedantist idea that really there's only an apparent universe, that we're misreading it somehow. When Thakur talks about Brahman, we have to understand the very full conception of Saguna and Nirguna Brahman both together. And sometimes he'll talk about Divine Mother has become all this. He's not speaking like a philosopher. Divine Mother has become all this. Sometimes it's Shakti itself. We have our Sarvam Kalavidam Brahma, the statement in the Upanishads. All this, Sarvamidam, everything that we see, Sarvamidam or Idam Sarvam, almost always refers to this visible universe. All this is nothing but Brahman. Now, in what sense? Is it a Brahman itself? Is it projection out of Brahman? There are all different theories about that. Thakur, everything was so tangible and real and experientiable, and just as part of his everyday understanding of things, that for him he didn't need these philosophical niceties to make these big distinctions. The philosopher will say, "Oh, is it Shakti? Is it Nirguna Brahman, Saguna Brahman?" Because we don't have that experience. We want everything to agree with logic, but the understanding that we have, logical understanding, based on all sorts of images and analogies and everything, is so far away from the experience, the real experience, that we hardly get a glimpse of it. Really, this one of the expressions we have, terms used for Brahman, is anupama. That means that none of these analogies that we use really can explain this, how this Brahman, the real nature of Brahman. They give us some very faint type of idea that I always try to remind myself that I shouldn't be fooled in thinking that I understand the relationship between the Brahman and individual souls simply because I understand the analogy of the sun being reflected in pots of water. That's very simple. Anybody can understand that. But then when we stop and think that, well, this water is mind is not like water. And the sun, this is also something physical with rays. It's not really consciousness, but it's the best analogy, or one of the best analogies that we have, but it is so far removed from that direct experience that Thakur had. He used to say that his mind would have to come down so far, even to utter the word Om. What to speak of talking about concepts and philosophy and everything. So there's such a big difference. I I know I keep referring to Swami Atmajnanananda. It's because I keep reading that. But he makes a very strong point about this, that the knowledge that we have from reading, the knowledge we have from hearing, the knowledge we have from understanding, is so far below the knowledge we have through anubhava, through direct experience. So when Thakur M says, he then explained to M that Brahman alone has become the universe and all living beings. He'll explain it through these analogies, and we'll have some type of understanding. But it doesn't give us too much of a real glimpse into what it meant for Sri Ramakrishna, how living this was. And really, when we read about Brahman in the Upanishads, it's much more of a living, throbbing, vibrant concept of this ultimate reality, or this ultimate being, almost. Something that goes between the Advaita Vedanta and the different other schools of Vedanta. Brahman with a little bit of a personality and power and all of these different things. We find that we're reading Kena Upanishad. We just started that this ultimate reality, this infinite absolute Brahman, isn't going to inspire anything or be that force behind which that explains. It just is. It's just pure existence. So even in the Upanishads, we have this idea that Brahman can even think. Let me be many. Of course, this is all metaphorical language, but still a little bit of a more full-blooded type of concept of a Brahman in the Upanishads. And then, of course, when we get to Gita, this same Brahman as Ishvara dwelling within the heart, making us move around, not just as the witness. These are all different. We can break them down into different schools and everything, but the same Brahman that is the light of consciousness within is also manifested as the Antaryaman, which can just be the witness, or it can be the real agent. It's causing us to run around and going around in circles and everything. So the Vedanta is very confusing. We have to understand that there are so many different vantage points. If we look at the Kathopanishad example of the chariot, now who is the driver of the chariot? In the Upanishad, it'll be buddhi. It'll be buddhi, and the mind is the reins and everything, and the Atman or Jivatman is not doing anything, dwelling within. Now, what did Thakur's favorite song say? That Mother alone is the driver of the chariot, and we're the chariot. There's all different ways, different angles to look at this very complex issue of the human being, which is a combination of the divine and the human. and can be explained in so many different ways, and they're all helpful. We like this idea that God alone dwells within, so that means God is the agent. If God alone dwells within, it's a beautiful idea, and that I'm just an instrument in the hands of God. A very nice idea. If we like this other idea that, oh, it's just mind, buddhi, and everything interacting, the gunas and everything, and I'm the witness, or God alone is the witness. There are all different ways of trying to understand that all fall short of the direct experience. But they give us some parameters, some guidelines, some way of trying to fix the mind to understand something which goes beyond understanding. So it's helpful, and we need one or the other of these different ideas to hold on to. The path of knowledge, this will be our ladder, to go, no matter which one we like. So M doesn't say here, but we know so many other times, this is a very common theme with Sri Ramakrishna, has become the universe and all living beings. So sometimes it's God dwelling within all beings, sometimes it's everything, pure consciousness, Chinmaya. Now, how do we understand that? That this world is what we're looking at is really some type of embodied form of consciousness. Very difficult. But this is a living experience for Sri Ramakrishna. Master, referring to a certain place, someone once said to me, nobody sings the name of God there. It has no holy atmosphere. No sooner did he say this than I perceived that it was God alone who had become all living beings. They appeared as countless bubbles or reflections in the ocean of Satchidananda. Now, all living beings. Before, it was the universe and all living beings. Now, are these the same thing? Not really. That these are two different statements, really. That Brahman has become all this, everything we see. Now, we can be followers of Sankhya, and we can say, no, all of this is nature, but that Purusha that dwells within is the divine presence of that Son of Knowledge. So we can take it that way. It's easier, I think, for us to say, yes, I can see that light of consciousness in all beings is the divine presence of God. I can see that. But
if there is only one non-dual reality, it has to be Brahman.
If there, well, yeah, but there's no proof for that. If there, you see, you're starting out with the presupposition. Yeah, of course. If there's only one reality, then everything is Brahman. That no one could possibly argue. The argument is there only one ultimate reality?
But also logically, there has to be only one reality, and which is not dual. That is also logically true.
The followers of Sankhya will not agree with that idea. They'll say there are two principles. They're side by side. They're related to each other. Yeah, Swamiji says that ultimate knowledge will be when we explain everything by one principle. But whether this universe is a projection out of Brahman, and then does that mean there's still only one, or at that point there's two? That through the lens of Maya and everything.
It's a matter of seeing.
They're all a matter of saying. Yeah. So yeah, if the Advaitin can make us agree that if everything has to be one, and this Brahman is the only reality, then everything is Brahman, or nothing else, nothing exists but Brahman.
Yeah, like the spider and its web and the fire and the sparks, it has to be the same.
Now we have these different analogies. The dualists accept this view. See, everybody, they all accept that the Brahman is the ultimate reality. For the dualist, the individual soul is like a spark that comes out. It has a separate existence. And there are many of them, and they're all real.
Apparently.
No. The spark comes out. There are many sparks that come out, and they're separate from the fire. And if we're going by the analogy, Now I'm talking about fire now, not talking about people. Huh? So this is that analogy. Then they'll say, yes, we should take that literally, that all living beings have come out of God. Most religions will say that. They come out of God, they'll go back to God. Or if we say the wave on the ocean, then it dwells within. But if we want to go to the snake in the rope, then we're really talking about it's just apparent. So the Upanishads give scope for all the different uh, relationships and schools of Vedanta. Even Swamiji says that and this. So the point here is that this whole idea of oneness we can feel from this point of view of consciousness. There's a universe for the, at least for strictly to Shankaracharya Advaitins, they won't see the oneness there. They'll see this as mithya. They'll see this as false. The Sarvam Kalavidam Brahma is not very much emphasized by Shankaracharya. He could have easily made that one of the Mahavakyas if he had wanted to. But he emphasizes the other side more.
How do Buddhists explain, because they don't believe in Atman, so how do they explain our existence?
Atman is not necessary if someone is a materialist. They'll a scientist. Just take a scientist. For a scientist, they'll explain everything in terms of black holes and energy, and there's energy and matter going back and forth, and they don't require anything other than that. Now, when it comes to how do they explain consciousness, then it's more difficult for them. If they want to say that this is part of the evolutionary process, and with the DNA, and at some point this evolution creates living cells and brain and all of that, and somehow consciousness evolves out of that. It's not a very strong position, but they'll try to explain it that way. But in terms of the universe, they can just explain it in terms of akasha and prana, in terms of matter and energy. Now, whether they're right or wrong, that's a different story, because where do they come from? What's the ground for them? We can't explain that. But not much we can really explain when it comes to these types of issues. And this is something that's these really great astrophysicists, these great quantum physicists, Einstein and others, they understood that. They understood they were dealing with phenomena, and they understood they were dealing with this cause and effect, and that not really explaining the ultimate cause of everything. Suppose we understand this Big Bang theory, then and black holes and all of that. We still not have the faintest idea how any of this, what the point of it is, and how it comes, what the ground for all of this is, and how to explain it. How to explain the fact that there's not nothing at all, that there's something. How do we explain it? We can't explain it.
Is it also because when we say Atman, we are trying to look at the pure subject as an object?
See, this is one of the main difficulties when we talk about that everything we see is nothing but consciousness. We've broken one of the main rules, that the self can never be seen. Consciousness, the subject, can never be turned into an object. So it has to mean something a little bit different from that. Yeah. If we very strictly, if we want to take it that way, then the self can never be objectified. And we know that when we talk about having a vision of the self, having a vision of Brahman, we know that we're not literally taking this Brahman, making it an object and having a vision of it. It means that we understand ourselves to be that. So it's a language problem there. But yeah, these are all philosophical difficulties. But I want to get back to that main point. For Sri Ramakrishna, these were direct experience, and not the type of hallucination. These were things that if anyone else has them, that'll be life-changing experiences. and verified by these great saints and everything. Yeah, the Buddhist position, of course, there are many different schools, but their concept of the self is that it's a composite, and because self for them means more this ego sense, and Vedanta will also accept that it's really composite. It has no ultimate absolute existence. How do they explain one thing? This sense of identity that goes through a whole lifetime. Vedanta will talk about this witness that has to be there to observe the whole thing. They'll say one moment to the next moment, it transfers. So they'll give the illustration of a fire brigade. Now the Vedantic idea will be you have a bucket of water, you carry it out through your whole lifetime. There's some sense of identity. Their idea is that one bucket you give to the next person, the next person, the next person, the next. There's no one single person. Each moment we're a new person, and it's just a bundle of karma and the sack of memories that goes to the next day. We don't have to explain everything by pointing to this Atman concept or even the witness concept. Now we may say that there's kind of flaws in this argument. It's not so strong. It's okay. It's an interesting point of view. One can actually become God-realized soul from that point of view. So many Buddhists attain nirvana and everything, taking that point of view. So this is all philosophy. These are all different theories and ideas. We don't have to. Who was right, the Buddhists or the Vedantists? It's not. Thakur didn't see the world that way. Motpot. All of these philosophical positions were just different paths to God realization. And when we get there, then we can throw away the ladder even. Once we've dug the well, we can throw everything back, the shovels and things in the well, or it doesn't matter at that point. But it can carry us there. This is why there's so many quarrels among religion, because we take our doctrines and theories to be ultimate truth. And if they are in conflict with somebody else, then the other person has to be wrong and we have to be right. Thakur didn't live in that world. His worldview was so different. That's why all of these attempts to pigeonhole him. He was really the Shakta, Vishishta Dvaita, and all of this. He would have laughed at these things. Somebody showed up and they're a dualist. He's a dualist. He's happy. He'll laugh and joke with them and everything, and be very content to see the world through that lens. Then Dvaitin comes, it'll be the same thing. So he says, I'll go back and read this again. Referring to a certain place, someone once said to me, nobody sings the name of God there. It is no holy atmosphere. No sooner did he say this than I perceived that it was God alone who had become all living beings. They appeared as countless bubbles or reflections in the ocean of Satchidananda. Two completely different analogies if we want to be philosophers and say, well, one is this theory, the other is a different theory. But for him, it didn't make any difference. This idea of bubbles, that there's an ocean of consciousness, and we're all different waves or different bubbles, something that come up to the surface. This is a lifetime. A bubble comes to the surface, then it's gone. But that one lifetime is gone. And this idea of reflection, we know this is a very beautiful idea, that what's the reality of the jiva? As many waves that come up, that there'll be a different reflection in each one. We have that beautiful idea from the Bhagavata that when the fish at night, that the moon, as they see a moon reflected in each one of the waves, and they think, oh, our friends have come to play with us. And then it becomes smooth, and they say, oh, it's just the moon, the one moon. So these are all nice analogies, and they're helpful. I'm not saying they're not helpful, but it's not the same as the experience. And of course, that's the ultimate goal, is for us to have that experience. Again, I find sometimes that living beings are like so many pills made of indivisible consciousness. Yeah, how to understand these things. Once I was on my way to Burdwan from Kamarpukur. At one place, I ran to the meadow to see how living beings are sustained. I saw ants crawling there. It appeared to me that every place was filled with consciousness. Hazra entered the room and sat on the floor. Hazra is another character that in this Leela, Thakur had all of these characters. Most of them were either relatives or people from his village or nearby villages there. It was kind of a family affair at Dakshineswar. He liked to argue. Master, again, I perceive that living beings are like different flowers with various layers of petals. Now, this may be the different koshas. Don't know exactly what's in his mind. They are also revealed to me as bubbles, some big, some small. While describing in this way the vision of different divine forms, the master went into an ecstatic mood and said, I have become, I am here. Uttering these words, he went into samadhi. His body was motionless. He remained in that state a long time, and then gradually regained partial consciousness of the world. He began to laugh like a boy and pace the room. His eyes radiated bliss as if he had seen a wondrous vision. His gaze was not fixed on any particular object, and his face beamed with joy. Still pacing the room, the master said, I saw the paramahamsa who stayed under the banyan tree, walking thus with just such a smile. There's many different sadhus used to come to the Dakshineswar temple because they had a place to stay and they could get food, and there was holy company, and Thakur was there, of course. So he saw many different types of sadhus and great souls. This we don't know exactly who this is. And there was one sadhu who Thakur met sitting on a cot outside of Ram's place. And he asked him what sampradaya you belong to. And he said, people call me a paramahamsa. And he liked him, and he invited him to Dakshineswar. Don't know if it's the same one or a different one, but anyhow. Am I too in that state of mind? You remember when that Purnagyani came and was acting like a madman, but man of perfect knowledge. And Thakur, he shivered and said, oh, mother, will I also become like that? Mad. Of course, he was more of a madman in his earlier days. He sat on the small couch and engaged in conversation with the Divine Mother, now still in that state of semi-consciousness. So Divine Mother is perfectly real to him in this state. Master, I don't even care to know, Mother, may I have pure love for thy lotus feet. Now, what doesn't he care to know? All of these philosophical niceties, all these things that we bother about so much. To him, one attains this state immediately after freeing oneself of all grief and desire. Now, this is also something very interesting, that we always read two things. One, that we'll get rid of all of these things after God realization. After God realization, no grief, no desire, no doubts. And then if we want God realization, we have to get rid of all of these things. So it sounds like a catch-22, and it sounds like we'll never be able to do it, right? Yeah. But the degree of freedom from desire, freedom from doubt, and all of that we have to attain in order to keep climbing up the steps of the ladder of the roof is not the same. That we have all of these concepts that mean one thing going up to the roof means something coming down, something different coming down, like this concept of ripe ego. When we use this ripe ego, we have to take the help of it in order to get to the roof. Now, what does it mean? It means that we try to imagine ourselves having that type of ego. Try to imagine ourselves, aropara, try to picture ourselves, really feel that I'm a child of the Divine Mother, that I'm a servant of God, that Rama is the ultimate reality. I'm like Hanuman. We try to do that. But after God realization, when the mind comes back down again, then we know that old ego was completely false. There's no playing of it. We assume it again because if there's any real sense of I, it's that complete oneness. If this ego disappears, but it's not the same. The same thing with doubt. We want to remove all doubt now so that we have some conviction. We have some real conviction. I don't doubt the truth of Thakur's words. I don't doubt the possibility of God realization. I have some real conviction about it. But real doubt doesn't leave until we have that God realization.
Sense of uncertainty.
There'll always be a little bit. There'll always be a little room for questioning things. Otherwise, we're not thinking people. There's always a little, but we have the conviction that these things are true, even though my understanding is not up to the mark. We have that shraddha. We need that shraddha and that vishwasa. We need that type of conviction and that type of faith. But real doubt won't go until we have that ultimate realization. So we can have as much conviction as we want about what it will be like. Suppose we want to go to Kedarnath. We were talking about Kedarnath today. There's some conviction that this will be a wonderful experience, that I'll be filled with joy, that I'll seeing the Kedarnath, I'll feel I'm seeing Shiva. All of that, we can have that type of conviction, but it won't be the same as when we have that experience. And there'll always be this little room for, well, am I just fooling myself? Will I be disappointed when I go there? It's always possible that these little doubts may come. If we don't have doubt, then we're not thinking very deeply about things. How Thakur encouraged Narendra to question everything, and how valuable it was for him. He said, I fought with the master. I questioned him. I fought with him every inch of the way. So now I know everything. It's because all of his doubts were removed and he found that whatever Thakur said was true. But if he hadn't questioned him, he wouldn't have had that type of conviction. And if he hadn't understood that he had to experience it for himself and to understand it himself, just to accept things because people say it without understanding it, is not very helpful. So this is interesting. One attains this state immediately after freeing oneself of all grief and desire. Now, how do we do that? We're human beings, free ourselves from all grief and desire. These, in spiritual life, if we look at Sri Ramakrishna and look at him as our ideal, now we can't, we have to understand that there's one type of ideal that Sri Ramakrishna represents that's only for the avatar. It's not for us. And there's another type of ideal that is the mold that we're supposed to follow. Then we can understand that not that we have no desires, not that there's no grief, but the mind will reach a stage where that longing is so tremendous that we'll forget everything else for the time being. God bless you. That we'll forget all these other things, and that will kind of, at least for the time being, smother everything. So that longing of the heart is so great for God realization that there's no space for these other desires. It's not that these old samskaras have all been burned up and disappeared. That'll happen after realization. But they get pushed to the side. They remain in the background. They remain hidden. They They don't trouble us at that point. So we can understand. So we wonder how at the time of death, the Holy Mother, she'll just say, if you don't realize God now at the time of death, we said, but we have all these desires. At the time of death, those desires won't come. We see with ordinary people, even the simple desire for food and enjoyments and things at the very end. Oh, do you want to watch something on television? No, not interested. Can I give you something? No. They just fall off at the end. So for someone leading a spiritual life, it should be even more so. So we can understand the very end, these worldly desires won't be there. We know we're facing that final moment of this life. So things can change radically at the very end also. Now, he said that to M. One attains this state immediately after freeing oneself of all grief and desire. To the Divine Mother. Mother, thou hast done away with my worship. Yeah, after his first vision of Mother Kali, it was impossible for him to act as a pujari anymore. And even when he was the pujari, it wasn't an ordinary type of worship. Please see, Mother, that I don't give up all desire. Now, for Sri Ramakrishna, giving up all desire meant how to remain in the body. The mind would just fly off like a bird out of the cage. He had to maintain some simple desires. He used to say bhakti and bhakta. He used to say the desire to devotion and devotees, but he also kept little desires for, I'll eat a certain food today, I'll do this, I'll do that. I want to see this person, that person. He would keep these little things also. Mother, the paramahamsa is but a child. Doesn't a child need a mother? Therefore, thou art the mother and I am the child. This was his ripe ego. This was the attitude that he kept going back to. When Thakur was in his stage of sadhana, that his ego would change. That depending on the spiritual practices he was doing, that sometimes he would adopt the servant ego when he worshiping Rama. That he would feel himself to be Hanuman. Then worshiping the baby Rama, he would feel himself to be the mother to the child. This mother, each one a different one. But after all of them, it's the one most natural to him was that of child to the mother. He would almost always go back to that. That was the one that prevailed in his life. Sri Ramakrishna was talking to the Divine Mother in a voice that would have melted even a stone. Again, he addressed her saying, mere knowledge of Advaita, I spit on it. Now, what does he mean? Does he not like this Advaita Vedanta? He says everything ends in oneness. This is Advaita. So we can't take it that way. He's talking about the dry attitude of the Jnani. He's talking about this idea that this world, dismiss this world as a dream. He says over and over, I don't like to call this world unreal like a dream. He doesn't say that there's no validity to that point of view, and you can't realize God. There's a personal preference for him. As the avatar, he has to accept the reality of this world on some level, as Lila. This was the level that he accepted it, as Lila, as a play of the Divine Mother. But the Jnani, who says, I don't care for anything in this world, I don't want to be attached, I want to just go within, that's what he didn't like that attitude. When Swamiji said, as Narendra, that I want to remain immersed in samadhi, and from time to time come down and just give a little sustenance to the body and go back, how we got scolded.
Maybe he showed he didn't like that attitude. Because he said, I'm a jnani within and a bhakta without.
Yeah, now this is also true that it doesn't mean that this also wasn't a mood that Thakur, in fact, Thakur was always kind of afraid that would be the dominant mood. And he knew that he couldn't do that. He knew that he had to, but this is Advaita Vada and this Advaita experience are two different things. But when Thakur had that ultimate experience, he himself said that after that, because there was a long period after that, before the devotees came, after that Nirvikalpa Samadhi experience, after Totapuri left, if there weren't people around, mind would automatically go back into that Nirvikalpa state. It constantly being pulled to that absolute merging in Brahman. It was such a joyful experience for him, and so natural for him. So he would have to fight to keep going to that. So there was a tremendous attraction for that. It's not that he's thinking, well, that's a waste of time or anything. It doesn't mean that. That he was equally content, we can say, to just remain absorbed in that. But he knew that the Divine Mother had a plan for him, and that he didn't have that luxury. Swamiji also said that. The whole life, all he wanted to do was go into a cave somewhere and meditate. But every time he tried, something would happen. He'd be pulled back down. That he also understood he had Thakur's work to do and everything. So, yeah, this is a very good point. This doesn't mean that he looked upon this ideal of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, realizing one's perfect oneness with the Brahman, as anything lower. For him, this was the ultimate. And all of the other paths can lead to that same Brahma Jnana also. But this dry attitude of the Jnani, this is what I think he's talking about, that looks upon this world as something insignificant. That means we don't care about the suffering of other people, that we only want our own liberation. That type of ideal, that's what he didn't like. So I think we have to take it that way. Or else, mere knowledge of Advaita, I spin on it, that is mere knowledge without the experience. It could be that way also. That just being able to spell the Hum Brahma, say Hazra. Hazra had that. Yeah. Soham, I am he. That mere knowledge, which is not really knowledge at all. It's not really knowledge at all. Yeah. There was a conversation with Narendra where they're talking about Hazra and it's calling him Jnani, and then Narendra says, but he really has no knowledge, something like that. Yeah. But at least that feeling that I understand that. This is the problem with those who become enchanted with this Advaita Vedanta and path of knowledge, that it becomes a very cerebral type of thing. The world is like a dream, and everything is unreal. All of that. There's no substance behind it. There's no experience behind it, and it requires tremendous dispassion, and it has to shine in the life of the person. No attachment to the world at all. The burning fire of renunciation within, in order to follow that path. It's not an easy path.
That applies also to self-styled bhaktas.
They'll have that fire of devotion. They'll have a different type of fire. Yeah. They'll also have to have that.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
passes for devotion.
Yeah. This is on all of the different paths. But generally, it seems to be particularly with those who like this idea of Advaita Vedanta without being able to digest it. Then they'll say, oh, no need for meditation or anything, this and that. This is all unreal. I'm already perfect. There's more of a chance of making that mistake that gets made in path of Bhakti Yoga is that fanaticism. My path is the only path. And sentimentalism. Ahem sat there speechless and looked at the divine manifestation in the Master. He said to himself, the Master is an ocean of mercy that knows no motive. He has kept himself in the state of a paramahamsa that he might, as teacher, awaken the spiritual consciousness of myself and other earnest souls. He has kept himself in the state of a paramahamsa. Now, Sri Ramakrishna would probably argue with him. No, Mother kept me in that state. He never took any responsible credit for anything like that. The mother kept him in that state. Paramahamsa, the way Thakur uses it, it's somebody beyond all convention. Doesn't worry about dressing like a monk. Thakur was so unconventional. In those days, for a sadhu to be living in a room with not just one cot, two cots, and to have slippers that he wore and warm clothes and everything. But he was beyond all of those types of distinctions. That's typical Paramahamsa. And further thought, the master says, Dvaita, Chaitanya, Nityananda. Now, this is another play on words that Thakur used to use, that Advaita refers to Advaitacharya. He was the one really he was the leader of the Vaishnava movement that Chaitanya, as Nimai Pandit, used to make fun of. They were all afraid of him. He would laugh at them, and they avoided him and everything. He was the one who really, he was like John the Baptist. He was the kind of precursor. And then Chaitanya, of course, Chaitanya Deva, Nityananda, his companion. So Thakur used to use this in a symbolic sense, that first Advaita, that is knowledge of the non-dual Brahman. So M says, that is to say, through the knowledge of the non-dual Brahman, one attains consciousness, Chaitanya, or awakening, you can say, that the realization, and enjoys eternal bliss. Now, here's a case where it's not through a devotional path, it's through Advaita, that he's saying. But again, Thakur's idea of Advaita was so different, that the lover gets merged in the beloved. This is also Advaita for him. He attains that state of non-dual and no distinction. That distinction in real love disappears. Swamiji used to tell this Sufi story, that the lover went to the beloved and knocked on the door, and she said, "Who is it?" And he said, it is your beloved, it is I." And she said, "No, go away." And again, it happened the third time. He says, "It is your very self." And then she opened the door. So they have that idea also through devotion, this idea of oneness or merging or perfect union, something like that. The master has not only attained the knowledge of non-duality, but is in a state of eternal bliss. He is always drunk with ecstatic love for the mother of the universe. With folded hands, Hazra looked at the master and said every now and then, "How blessed you are, how blessed you are." Now the Hazra, sometimes he would laugh at Sri Ramakrishna and say, "Oh, you're so attached to these young boys," all sorts of things. And then at other times, he would recognize Thakur and bow before him, and he had his moods. He was a character. Master to Hazra, "But you have hardly any faith. You simply live here to add to the play, like Jatila and Kutila, to just stick in the plot." In the afternoon, M paced the temple garden alone. He was deeply absorbed in the thought of the master and was pondering the master's words concerning the attainment of the exalted state of the Paramahamsa after, see, this left a deep impression, after the elimination of grief and desire. M suffered from grief because of his worldly situation and the family situation and everything. And desire, who knows exactly what were the strong desires for M, but anyhow, he took this something to be very important. M said to himself, "Who is this Ramakrishna acting as my teacher? Has God embodied himself for our welfare? The master himself says that no one but an incarnation can come down to the phenomenal plane from the state of nirvikalpa samadhi." So this is the end of that day. The next day is Monday. So in the day after day, this, as I said, this is because in those days they had a long holiday for Christmas time under the British, naturally. So we'll start next time on page 358, Monday, December 24th, Christmas Eve, 1883. Om Niranjanam Nityamanantarupam Bhaktanukham Bhatadavikraham Ishavataram Parameshamidhikam Tam Ramakrishnam Shirasa Namah. We bow our heads before Sri Ramakrishna, who was stainless, of infinite nature, whose heart melts in sympathy for his devotees, who is an embodiment of the divine and the Supreme Lord, and ever worthy of our worship. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Everybody knows, of course, that this is the Navaratri period. We'll have worship of Durga Puja will be Sunday at 11. And everyone is welcome to come, but it'll also be online. So you can go to our website and go to the live stream YouTube, and you can click on it. 11, you'll be able to see it. Okay.